What happens when one of Hollywood's most legendary actors faces daytime television's most controversial hosts? You won't believe what unfolds when Harrison Ford sits down with the View panel and suddenly finds himself in what can only be described as an ambush. The tension that erupted during last night's taping has sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. By the end of this explosive exchange, one of cinema's greatest icons would walk off the set in a display of fury that left the audience frozen in silence. Before we dive into what happened, hit subscribe and leave a comment below, because you won't believe what unfolds when professional respect clashes with daytime political drama. The setup was supposed to be a simple promotional interview. Harrison Ford, the 81-year-old screen legend, had agreed to appear on The View to talk about his newest project and reflect on a career spanning more than 50 years. Producers promised a light, fun discussion about his upcoming film and maybe some nostalgic stories from Indiana Jones and Star Wars, the roles that made him a household name. Instead, it became a lesson in how to disrespect a guest who has offered audiences more iconic moments than almost anyone from his generation. From the second Ford walked on set, something felt off. The usual warm greeting given to guests was missing. Whoopi Goldberg, sitting in her moderator's chair, barely glanced up from her notes as Ford took the stage. The audience cheered loudly, clearly thrilled to see him, but the panel's energy felt cold and dismissive. Ford, ever professional, smiled and waved before sitting down, unaware of the hostile situation he was stepping into. Whoopi began, her tone already edged in provocation familiar to longtime viewers. You've been making movies for what, 50 years now? Must be nice to have that kind of job security in Hollywood, especially for someone who's never had to worry about the issues regular working people face. The remark hit hard. Ford's expression changed only slightly, but those who knew him would notice the tightening around his eyes. He had worked his way from carpentry jobs to becoming one of the industry's most respected actors, and here he was being lectured about privilege. Well, Whoopi, he replied calmly, you might be surprised to learn that I spent years doing construction and carpentry, struggling to get by while trying to break into this business. Nothing was handed to me. But Whoopi pressed on, leaning forward. Oh, come on, Harrison. You're a white man in Hollywood. You think that didn't open doors for you that others didn't get? You think your path was the same as someone who looks like me trying to succeed in this industry? The other panelists traded uneasy looks, realizing this was veering far away from promoting Ford's film. Joy Behar shifted uncomfortably, and Sunny Hostin looked ready to jump in. The audience went from excited to confused to visibly uneasy as they watched a beloved icon being challenged over issues unrelated to his career. Ford's jaw set, but his tone stayed controlled. I'm not here to dismiss anyone else's struggles, but I also won't apologize for working hard and being lucky enough to succeed at something I care deeply about. I've always believed talent and persistence matter more than anything. Talent and persistence, Whoopi repeated, her voice heavy with sarcasm. Easy to say when the system was built for people who look just like you. The air in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Ford's publicist, watching from backstage, was already reaching for her phone to put a stop to the disaster, but Ford himself wasn't backing down. He looked ready to push back. You know what, Whoopi? He said, his voice firm but still composed. I came here to talk about my work, to connect with fans, and to have a respectful conversation. If you want a political debate, fine, but don't pretend to know my story, and don't lecture me about my journey when you clearly haven't done your research. The audience fell completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Whoopi's eyes flashed with anger at being challenged so directly. She was accustomed to guests either aligning with her views or quietly absorbing her criticisms. Ford's pushback was clearly not what she expected, and her reaction would ignite what was about to become an even more volatile clash. Excuse me, Whoopi snapped, her voice rising with irritation. Don't lecture me about homework, Harrison. I've been fighting battles in this business since before you were Han Solo. I know exactly what privilege looks like, and I'm staring right at it. Joy Behar, sensing the conversation slipping out of control, tried to lighten the mood with a weak joke. Well, I think we can all agree Harrison has given us some great movies over the years. But Ford was done with polite small talk. The disrespect had gone too far. Anyone familiar with his history in Hollywood knew he never tolerated foolishness. The man known for blunt honesty with directors, even when it risked roles, was about to remind everyone why he earned decades of respect through professionalism and integrity. The confrontation had reached a boiling point, and what followed would turn a tense interview into a viral moment sure to be dissected for weeks. Ford's patience was nearly gone, and Whoopi's aggressive style had finally met someone who refused to be pushed around on national television. Let me explain something, Ford said, his voice dropping into that deep, gravelly tone that had commanded authority on film sets and inside studios for years. I've sat through plenty of interviews, good ones and terrible ones, but I've never been invited on a show just to be personally attacked for things I had no hand in. Whoopi's face deepened in anger. She was clearly unaccustomed to being confronted so directly, especially by someone who was supposed to be her guest. Attacking you? Oh, please, she fired back. I'm trying to have a real conversation about real life. Maybe that's something you're not used to up there in your Hollywood bubble. My Hollywood bubble. Ford repeated, brows lifting. Viewers could see the same intensity that made characters like Jack Ryan so compelling. You mean the bubble where I spent my 20s hammering nails and building cabinets because I couldn't afford rent? Where my first break came because a director needed bookcases built in his office. That bubble, Sonny Hostin, who had remained quiet until now, decided to join in. But Harrison, you have to recognize that once you got that break, your race and gender made the path smoother than it would have been for others. Ford turned to her, stunned. You know what I have to recognize? Absolutely nothing. I don't owe you or anyone else some forced acknowledgement. I earned what I achieved. I showed up, I worked hard, I treated people well, and I earned my place in this business. The audience, riveted, watched the legendary actor defend himself against what had clearly turned into a coordinated challenge. Some shifted uncomfortably, others leaned in, unable to look away from the unfolding chaos. Whoopi wasn't slowing down. If anything, Ford's resistance only fueled her further. Earned your place really? You think it's just coincidence that nearly every major action star of your era happened to be a white man? You think that was all just talent? I think, Ford replied, his voice now weighted with the full force of his experience, that you're trying to reduce my entire life's work to make a political point. And honestly, that's offensive, not just to me, but to anyone, from any background, who worked hard to achieve something. Joy made another desperate attempt to redirect. Why don't we talk about your new movie? No, Whoopi cut in sharply, refusing to drop the subject. I want to finish this conversation. Harrison, do you or do you not believe that systemic advantages helped your career? The challenge hung in the air. Ford stared at her for a long moment, visibly deciding how far he was prepared to let this go. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, but far more powerful. You want to know what I believe? I believe I'm sitting here being lectured by someone who invited me under false pretenses. I was told we'd talk about my new film and my career. Instead, I'm being put on trial for being successful while white. And the most insulting part, you're doing it with cameras rolling, knowing anything I say will be twisted and used against me. The studio was completely silent. Even the crew had stopped moving, watching the moment unfold. Ford's publicist was signaling frantically from the sidelines, but his attention remained locked on the confrontation. Whoopi leaned back, a smug smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. So now, you're the victim, she asked. I'm saying, Ford answered, voice controlled but eyes burning, that I came here as a guest and I'm being treated with outright disrespect. And I'd like to know why you think that's acceptable. Sarah N., quiet until now, finally spoke. Harrison, I think what we're trying to understand is your views on diversity in Hollywood. Ford turned toward her with a stare, sharp enough to cut through steel. My view, I've worked with actors, writers, and directors from every background. I've seen talent shine, regardless of where it came from. What I haven't found useful is sorting people into boxes and then judging what they should or shouldn't have achieved based on those labels. Whoopi was growing more irritated. Easy to say when you're already standing at the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain. Ford's voice rose, the calm finally slipping. I started at the bottom of a construction site. I earned everything I have by working hard, showing up, being professional, and by never treating people the way you're treating me right now. The tension in the room was thick enough to feel. Audience members exchanged uneasy looks. This wasn't the lighthearted celebrity chat they expected. It had become a direct clash between a Hollywood legend and a daytime host determined to tear him apart on live television. Whoopi's patience evaporated. Her voice snapped, the facade gone. Don't lecture me about professionalism. I've been a professional longer than you've been famous. Ford leaned forward, posture stiffening with anger. Then act like one. Act like a professional instead of someone using their platform to settle personal grudges. The panelists looked at each other in panic. The situation had gone far beyond what anyone expected, and neither Ford nor Whoopi showed any intention of backing down. If anything, both were pushing toward disaster, the kind that would make this interview infamous. What followed pushed the exchange past any return. Decades of Hollywood frustration collided with daytime television attitude in a way that left everyone stunned, face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Whoopi made the mistake of escalating again. You know what your problem is, Harrison? You're just another entitled Hollywood actor who can't handle being called out on your privilege. You're throwing a fit because someone finally told you the truth. The sentence struck like a slap. Ford's expression turned ice cold, and the entire room froze. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, yet more forceful than a shout. A tantrum, he repeated, slowly, fury replacing his practiced calm. You think standing up for myself against a personal attack is a tantrum? He rose from his seat, towering over the table, commanding the room's attention. I've been doing this for 50 years. I've worked with some of the most difficult people in this business and never lost my professionalism. But I have never, not once, been treated with such blatant disrespect by someone claiming to be a professional broadcaster. Sonny Hostin made one last attempt at rescue. Harrison, Maybe we can move forward and talk about the film. Move forward. Ford cut her off, glaring. You think I'm going to sit back down after what just happened and pretend everything's fine? You expect me to promote my movie after your colleague just spent 10 minutes trying to tear down everything I've worked for? Joy Behar tried another joke, desperate to ease the tension. Well, this is definitely more exciting than our usual interviews. Ford didn't even blink at the humor. His glare could have made studio executives crumble. Exciting. You think humiliating a guest on air is exciting? You think this is what your audience tuned in for? Whoopi, recognizing she had crossed a line but trapped by ego, pushed forward anyway, unable to retreat without losing face. Oh, please. You're acting like we committed a crime. All we did was ask you some tough questions about reality. If you can't handle that, maybe interviews aren't for you. That was the last straw. Ford's eyes blazed with a fury that anyone who had worked with him would recognize as the moment. His legendary patience had finally run out. When he spoke, his voice remained controlled but carried the full weight of his anger. Can't handle tough questions, lady. I've faced tough questions from real journalists for 50 years. What you're doing isn't journalism. It's not even entertainment. It's mean-spirited bullying disguised as social commentary, and I won't sit here and take it. He began removing his microphone, each movement deliberate and final. The audience sat in stunned silence as one of Hollywood's most respected actors prepared to walk away from an interview that had become a disaster. You know the sad part, Ford continued, his tone now laced with genuine disappointment. I used to respect this show. I thought it provided an important platform for different perspectives. But what I've experienced here today isn't about perspectives or meaningful dialogue. It's about tearing people down to make yourselves feel important. Sarah N. made a last-ditch attempt to calm things. Harrison, please, let's just take a breath. Ford looked at her with something close to pity. Take a breath. I've been taking breaths for the last 15 minutes while your colleague attacked my character, my career, and my integrity. I'm done taking breaths. I'm done being polite. And I'm definitely done with this conversation. He tossed his microphone onto the coffee table with the final, dismissive gesture. The sound echoed through the silent studio like a gunshot. Whoopi, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of what had just occurred, tried once more to regain control. Harrison, you don't have to leave. We can talk like adults. Ford turned to her one last time. His voice carried the weight of every iconic character he had ever played, every moment of strength he had brought to the screen over 5 decades. Adults, you want to talk about acting like adults? Adults don't ambush guests. Adults don't use their platform to settle personal vendettas. Adults show respect to the people they invite into their space. What happened here today wasn't adult behavior. It was playground bullying with cameras rolling. He began walking toward the exit, each stride confident and deliberate. The audience remained frozen, many clearly unsettled by what they had seen. Some already reached for their phones, capturing what would become one of daytime television's most viral moments. This interview is over, Ford announced as he reached the edge of the set. And honestly, based on today, I don't know why anyone would want to be a guest here. You've turned what should have been a simple conversation into a public execution. Whoopi's face red with embarrassment and anger, made one last, desperate attempt to assert herself. Well, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Ford stopped, turned back, and delivered a look that would be replayed and analyzed on social media for weeks. His voice was quiet, but every word carried through the studio. You know what that comment tells everyone watching? Exactly who you are, and exactly what this show has become. Congratulations, Whoopi. You've shown the world that you care more about landing the final insult than maintaining any shred of professionalism. With that, Harrison Ford walked off the set of The View, leaving a panel of stunned hosts, a shocked audience, and what would become one of the most talked about moments in daytime television history. The silence after his exit was deafening, broken only by the soft shuffle of feet and the murmurs of the audience. Struggling to process what they had just witnessed, the cameras continued rolling, capturing the aftermath of a confrontation that made it clear a Hollywood legend had drawn a line, refusing to be bullied or diminished. What was meant to be a routine promotional interview had instead become a masterclass in how not to treat a guest, and its consequences would be felt far beyond the studio walls.